Hello, everyone, and welcome into the Go 24/7 podcast. My name is Bryce Koon alongside Sonny Ship, where we awake here on Thursday morning, Sonny, from relatively, and you shot me a text, drama-free day for LSU fans in this signing class. All 27 guys signed. Sonny, you've been doing this a long time. Have you ever had one where it was just as simple as publishing the articles and flipping them over to sign? Was this one of the easiest?
Don't get used to it, dude. Don't get used to it. Not if you're going to cover LSU for a while, at least. Yeah, man. 25 years, and don't ever remember as drama free, and just a day in which really everything just lined up perfectly for LSU as far as the way it was supposed to, and the way that you thought it would. It really just lined up perfectly for LSU, and you couldn't really say anything different. The biggest fear was that is Dominic McKinley going to sign? If he did sign on Wednesday, I think that would have boded better for Texas or someone else than it would for LSU. But as of right now, we hold our fingers, and we'll see if it goes until Friday. But he's still planning on coming in January. Terry Bussey, same thing. They're expected to get him back on campus in January again, and so. Cohen Eccles on Friday, and really just you have to, you got to give credit to the staff and to the recruiting office and the recruiting department, because it really went off without a hitch as far as what they thought, how they thought Wednesday would go.
Yeah, and I think too the weekend before or something came out where none of the kids committed visited anywhere else. I mean, these kids have been locked in, especially some of the ones that committed back in the spring. I mean, there really has been drama throughout the course of the entire recruiting season for a lot of these kids. They've kind of been locked in. Have you seen anything like that where LSU's not sweating bullets there on the last weekend, official visit weekend?
No, and probably one of the oddest things that really came out of it when you consider this is as much of the battle that LSU was in with Caden Durham to get him away from Oklahoma, to get him away from Texas A&M, all the Texas schools. He was a guy who never took an official visit to LSU.
Hmm, that's crazy.
He never took an official visit to LSU. Came in unofficially several times. Even came in after he went to Oklahoma for his official visit. Came to LSU the following weekend for an unofficial visit with Colin Simmons and all those guys. And that was really when the tide really, you saw that you saw everyone kind of starting to say, okay, this looks like LSU could win out here, and it looks like LSU will win out. And
Yeah.
so odd, odd that you see someone of that stature in that big of a battle with some other schools, and especially being that he's a kid who was from Oklahoma. You know,
Yeah.
when's the last time LSU took a kid who was born in Oklahoma away from Oklahoma? That's I'd have to do some research on that. Even 25 years, I can't think of anyone that jumps out.
I know we've talked about this class a lot, and I hopped on a show yesterday and told them, for me personally, Sonny, I think when you look at the rankings and you've been a big proponent of some of these kids getting a bump, and we had the latest update here this week. But when you look at this, there's a lot of kids that you feel like could develop into what LSU's been known to do with a couple of 2 and 3 stars to develop those guys into NFL caliber players. Who are some of the guys that signing days come and gone? They're on board that you're really kind of excited to watch what type of ascent they could have once they get onto campus.
I think when you look at a guy's measurables, and you consider how little fanfare maybe he's gotten throughout this whole process, Ori Williams is a guy that jumps out at me. Out of San Marcos, Texas. Down there, not far from Texas's backyard. 6'8", 297 is what LSU listed him at yesterday. And I mean, that's a terrific frame
Yeah.
for a guy coming in, because you're getting a guy who's got the length that you like for an edge protector, got the height, got the size, and now you can fill out that frame. You can fill it. Jake Flint and company can fill out that frame, and they don't have to break it down before they get him here.
Yeah.
Kyrie Lee's another guy that I look at, and for that instance right there, he was probably north of 340 the summer before his junior year. and then he kind of started transforming his body, and then you saw him the summer before his senior year,
Mhm.
a year later, and he looks phenomenal. He
Yeah.
looks phenomenal in that. If he's over 300, he's only a pound, he's only a couple of pounds over 300, 6'5" and a half, terrific measurables. So he's another guy, an offensive lineman that when you look at and you look at him coming in, and that's kind of the overall theme with a lot of this offensive line class. Ethan Callaway might be a guy that they've got him listed at 325 right now. He might have to transform his body a little bit, work on trimming down a little bit before he gets here. But other than that, I think when you look at the offensive line haul in a nutshell, you really have to be impressed with the physical measurables and characteristics they bring in. And that's not even mentioning Weston Davis, probably the guy who's got the most upside out of any of them, a guy who really shot up the rankings. I want to say he was 152 or 153 overall in our most recent update. And he went from outside the top 247. So there was
Mhm.
one other guy, the guy ranked ahead of him, I believe, is the only other person who made a bigger jump than Weston Davis in that latest updated top 247. And so, when you can feel good about some offensive linemen and you don't even touch on the bell cow of the group, I think that really speaks to the job and to the haul that Brad Davis made. And oh, by the way, you've still got a very highly rated interior offensive lineman out there in Cohen Eccles, who you may very well land on Friday.
Yeah, real quick, you mentioned the jump. So Weston Davis did make quite the jump. At 152, Jalen Brown jumped from 501 to
Yeah,
152. I mean, that's crazy.
right.
That's quite the
Yeah.
ascent there on the latest update there, 24/7. You can catch that over on our site. Hey, let's talk about kind of what's left. You mentioned Eccles. We've talked McKinley and Bussey, but Friday's going to be an interesting day. Obviously, crystal ball season is in full effect right now. Cohen Eccles trending towards LSU. Sonny, I can't get over the fact that you look at what's already committed in this offensive line room, you look what you took last year, and you look what's currently on the roster. And a kid like Eccles is sitting there saying, hey, I kind of feel like I might want to be a part of this. Where on the other side of things, there's a bigger need at Auburn. There's a desperate need at Auburn for offensive linemen. What are you taking away from what Brad Davis was able to do on that final official visit weekend this past weekend, just for LSU to be in this race here with a day to go?
Well, I think if you're an interior offensive lineman, you look at LSU and you see some opportunities there. Miles Frazier, I'm still in the camp that I think he's going to declare for the draft. I think that he'll probably be gone. Charles Turner, he got invited to the Senior Bowl. It looks like he's going to go on to the NFL, take a year of eligibility with him. Then you have Garrett Dellinger, who's got a year left if he comes back this year.
Yeah.
And so, you've got some opportunities there. You lost Marlon Martinez, who was kind of your swing man on that offensive line. He hit the portal and went to Mississippi State with a year left to play. So I think as an interior offensive lineman, you've got some opportunities there.
Mhm.
You've got some opportunities to come in and to possibly be able to get into the mix early on because you know, if Emory Jones slides to the inside from the edge and he plays on the inside next year, he's still probably going to be there only one more year and he'll be off to the
Yeah.
NFL like Will Campbell. And so, I think while Auburn may be able to say, okay, we have a little bit of an easier path to the field for you right here, we also have what Auburn is right now compared to what LSU is right now
Mm.
as far as stability goes and being on, some solid footing. So I think that I think LSU's situation, while it may not be as pretty, I guess, as Auburn's is in terms of opportunities, I think LSU is an interior offensive lineman. I think it's going to present some good opportunities for some of these young guys in a relatively short fashion.
Yeah, and it kind of feels like too. I mean, look, LSU gets to, I believe, the semifinalist round of the Joe Moore Award. You're going to return, some of the big components of that, and you're going to be able to slot in a guy like DJ Chester next year that the staff's really high on and felt comfortable putting in that Missouri game. I mean, it just kind of feels like they're getting to a point, Sonny, where, I wasn't around for this, but, fans on our board have said, hey, it's nice to be talking about, too many guys for 5 spots, because this is a position that really wasn't a strength kind of before Brian Kelly got there. How have you seen that just change under Brad Davis in just 2 years, and really since kind of Kelly got here and ramped up the recruiting?
Well, I'll take you on a little trip down memory lane, as far as a little nightmare down memory lane as far as LSU fans go. LSU used to be an absolute laughing stock when it came to quarterbacks. I mean, an
Yeah.
absolute laughing stock, to the point to where you had walk-ons. You had walk-ons coming in. You had a walk-on from Harvard come in that was your starting quarterback one year. So
Wow.
it went, man, there was about a 10 or 12-year stretch where it was absolutely brutal. Offensive tackles and offensive line went through a similar stretch, and the two kind of coincided with one another. So right about the time LSU came out of the quarterback funk, you had Joe Burrow kind of coming up. LSU won the Joe Moore Award in 2019 also.
Hmm.
And so that's when you kind of started getting a feel like, okay, instead of the offensive line being a laughing stock and just being a big punchline of jokes, it kind of started to getting to where, okay, you started seeing some guys come in, you started building some little bit of depth, you started getting some guys, to the next level and so forth. But what Brian Kelly's done in his short time here, man, I mean, it's nothing short of phenomenal. That's the only word that I can really
No.
think of, because you've not only shored up the offensive line, you've made it into a group that is, one of the best in the country. You can already start looking at the preseason award list, All America list next year. Will Campbell's probably going to have a spot. Will Campbell will have a spot on there. Emory
Yeah.
Jones is probably going to have a spot on a lot of those offensive lines. Oh, by the way, we got Lance Hurd coming up, who was I believe he was a freshman All-American this year. If not, he was
Yes.
definitely freshman All-SEC. So he's a guy waiting in the wings. And then you start looking at all the other guys. So you're really you're really at a point now. And Kelly even said this yesterday on Wednesday when he talked about the signing class. He feels good about the offensive line. They feel really good about
Yeah.
the offensive line. Now, if they could get to where they feel that good about the defensive line room and the cornerback room, I think that that you could finally put those fans who are chirping in the background, what's going on, what's going on. You'd finally give them something to where they would be happy and they wouldn't have any any argument on. But as far as the offensive line, room and all, yeah, I just phenomenal is all I can think of when it comes to the job that Kelly has done in that short time. And kudos to Brad Davis. A lot of kudos to Brad Davis. He's been the offensive line coach ever since Kelly got here. He was one the year before that, the interim head coach when Orgeron got fired. So, just another, terrific job. And when you look at the assistants on the LSU staff, I think Joe Sloan, I don't think we've heard the last of Joe Sloan being a hot
Yeah.
commodity on the assistant coaching market, particularly for someone who's looking for an offensive coordinator, a young offensive coordinator, someone to call plays. I think that's coming for him. And I think Brad Davis is probably going to be another hot commodity, and that you're even going to start hearing that when you have some of these G5 and some of these lower level FBS, some high level FCS teams looking for a head coach, I think Brad Davis's name is going to be one tossed around and mentioned a lot.
Yeah, and I mean, well deserved, the way that he commands
Absolutely.
that room and commands recruiting. I mean, he's a guy that if you get when you make the jump, people get wary of that, make a jump from position coach. But look, it can work if you have the right guys surrounding you on a staff and X's and O's. Y. Um, you talked about defensive line. Okay, so Brian Kelly was asked the question in the presser yesterday about defensive line transfers, recruiting, and pretty much kind of said, look, we brought in Shone Washington. They're excited about what he can bring to the table. Can any addition be better than that, especially with this retention aspect, which would make fans and make us think, hey, Mekhi Wingo, Mason Smith potentially coming back. How do you feel about this defensive line group where obviously in the portal they've looked at, and it also figures in a guy like Dominic McKinley as well, who would figure into that portion, who did move that date back. I mean, that bodes well for LSU. You kind of hinted at that. So this defensive line group as a whole, where do you feel like that's headed with the addition of Washington? And are they just kind of content sitting on that going forward?
If you don't lose Mason Smith, Mekhi Wingo, or Jacoby and Guillory, and you have those three, plus Jalen Lee coming back, plus you have the guys coming in on top of Sean Washington, who, you really have to look at more as a transfer, as a guy who
Yeah.
started out at Georgia, played this past year at this past season at junior college. You kind of look at him as a guy that he's coming in. Okay, he's physically there where you need him to be. Yeah, we've got to fine tune some things, maybe trim a little belly fat, something like that. But strength wise, he should be pretty close to being able to, for being able to go and being able to be ready. I don't think LSU is going to be out of the market for a defensive lineman, but I think that it's going to be, people see Walter Nolan, the number one guy in the transfer portal, the defensive lineman at Texas A&M, said Oregon and Ole Miss was his final two. And fans are kind of like, man, why? What's going on? How come not LSU? Well, you're not going to get a guy like that. If you're going to get someone, you start looking at a guy like Jordan Jefferson, someone who started at
Hmm.
West Virginia, who comes in, who is going to be okay with being a rotational piece, who
Yeah.
doesn't have to have a guarantee like, hey, I know you was a starter at, Central Michigan last year, but yeah, we can't guarantee you a starting spot. If that's what you're looking for, this is not the place. That's the
Yeah.
kind of guy that they need to be able to get, is the ones who's going to be able to, who's going to be willing to do that. Like they got last year, like they got Jalen Lee, Jordan Jefferson. You
Yeah.
still have that second transfer window in the spring. Probably going to be a lot more active than it was last year. You're going to have guys who go through the spring to see where they are, and then they'll make decisions to look for a greener pasture somewhere in the spring. The grad transfer market, that's open all year
Hmm.
long, and so you're still going to have some opportunities. But I think the notion and the idea that LSU is going to get this big name defensive line transfer, I don't think it's going to happen in this period. And I think that's because, that you're going to have that core group of veterans coming back.
Got the chance, Sonny, as we wrap it up here, to go to two different high schools yesterday and talk with not only just the players but the coaches about what Kelly and this staff have been able to do when it comes to in-state recruiting. I know something that's you and I've been talking about on the podcast all year long. There were early concerns about this, but one thing I was able to take away, I'm going to have a full piece on this, early next week, was the intentionality that Brian Kelly's able to relate to kind of the kids down here. That's something that the coaches say. Hey, when the cameras are off, the media's not around. This guy is just really really fun to be around. And guys, not only Kelly, but a guy like Brad Davis, a guy like even Matt House has been a guy that has made some different stops at high schools. What have you seen or what have you heard just over the past, let's say 365 days here that has kind of allowed LSU to do such a good job that they did in this class of saying, hey, it might not be the best star rankings wise, but man, they really kept this in-state talent home, which is going to help in the long run.
Well, if you go back to, you go back to last year's class, the last class, it had guys like Deshaun Womack, Jackson Howard, Jalen Brown. You just go down the list. They really had to kind of venture outside the state of Louisiana to kind of make up for a lot of these guys, Arch Manning, Tackett Curtis, Derek Williams,
Hmm.
who were headed out of state. And a lot of those recruitments that I just referenced, started a well over a year before Kelly and his staff even got here. So they came in behind the eight ball right there, took a little bit of heat for all those guys leaving the state. And this year, if you get Dominic McKinley, I believe that will be nine of the top 10 inside the state. If you get Dominic McKinley, that they will have gotten. Wardell Mack, I believe, is that
Yeah.
lone exception who's going to Texas. And this is a guy that, this is a guy that I'll have more in this behind the scenes piece and kind of looking at looking at the class and some things that happened and developed. But this is a guy who was, who the last 2 to 3 weeks before the signing period started, he was fine with going and checking out LSU, taking an unofficial visit, going to check things out, and LSU didn't want any part of it.
Mm.
So they had moved on. They said, okay, you were going to Florida, you were going to Texas. So when that happens, when you're willing to tell a guy, the one guy in the top 10 that you haven't gotten, or that that it doesn't look like you would get. When you tell that guy that, I think that's a strong statement, and I think it's a good statement that you have to send, because I think too many times, you know, it happens both ways. It happens to where coaches hold kids hostage, kids hold coaches hostage, and stuff. I think it happens a little bit more on the kids front, to where the kids hold the coaches a little bit hostage. And I like the fact that a staff is confident enough and comfortable enough to say, you know what, don't care about the public perception. That's the games you want to play. We'll play those games too. And so I feel like LSU as a staff is getting a better handle on the state of Louisiana. I feel like that they're building those relationships a little bit deeper, a little bit better. I think Frank Wilson taking over as recruiting coordinator when Brian Polian moved on, I think it
Mhm.
gave the staff more of a sense of Louisiana first, as opposed to bringing someone from the Midwest who had never been in the South like Polian before.
Yeah.
And so having that understanding of Louisiana first, I think is going to resonate throughout the rest of the staff. And you also have to keep in mind, when Polian and Kelly and all those guys got down here, you had a lot of guys who had never really recruited Louisiana much before. Probably
Yeah.
done some spot recruiting, but Matt House hadn't been down here a whole lot. Kerry Cooks hadn't been down here a whole lot. Jamar Kane, they did some spot recruiting, but they didn't go and hit high school after high school after high school, have to build and nurture those relationships with the high school coaches. So I really think that Frank Wilson, in that role as recruiting coordinator. Sherman Wilson's one of those guys who just does an unbelievable job for the
Yeah.
staff. J.R. Belton, those are they're Louisiana guys. They grew up here. They also understand those relationships and how important it is for work in the state of Louisiana. So I just think that overall, that the staff as a whole has more of an emphasis and more of of understanding that emphasis and why it should be an emphasis of recruiting the state of Louisiana.
Well, they've done a good job of that. You talked about it. 9 out of the 10 that they have a shot at least 8 they've gotten signed, and Dominic McKinley, kind of that big fish left there. But hey, we still got a lot of time. Early signing day is come and gone. We do have this signing period that's going to extend until Friday, and then Sunny transfer portal, and then there's like a bowl game or something sandwiched in, and then we'll kind of kick it off all again with winter workouts and spring football. As you've gotten deeper into this, it seems like there's just truly no off season in college football. I'm sure there was at some point there was a little bit of downtime. Does it feel like now that it's just a constant revolving door of content and news?
Dude, it's such a revolving door. Like you said, we're going to go from the early signing period, still the transfer portal, looking at the late period, 2025. And all of a sudden, before you know it, there's going to be a baby coon here.
Oh, geez, for the folks that don't know,
What are we going to do
welcome.
with that, huh?
I don't know. I don't know.
Did I just spill the beans to the whole world?
No, no, no.
Okay,
Well,
good,
you're on the
good.
podcast.
I didn't think I did, but I wanted to make sure.
No, yes, no. It's public information. If you're on the board, if you're on the podcast, you're like, what's happening? We'll be welcoming a baby girl
We'll be
there.
posting an address soon for everyone to send gifts to. We're gonna have
Yes.
we're gonna have an online baby shower on Go247 for you.
Hey, look, we won't turn it down. Honestly, I won't turn
Absolutely.
that
I'm gonna
down.
get
So
that thread going.
that's awesome stuff. Hey, we appreciate everyone tuning in all season long, but make sure you stay tuned to the content. Sonny, I do believe we're running a new deal. What, 60% off? Another holiday deal for people on Go 24/7. I think it averages out to about what, almost 350 a month,
350
350,
a month, something
360 a
like
month.
that.
I mean,
Yeah.
it's a great deal for you to come in and get some great insider tips. Join a great community as we kind of continue with football, basketball, and then, man, I was talking with Glenn. We're 2 months away from baseball too, which I
Dude,
know
it's
fans are
all
really
it's
excited about.
we're close enough now to where we can almost start doing a countdown.
It's crazy, like
Yeah,
how time
I
gets
know.
away from you. It's a lot of fun. But hey, thanks for tuning in to the Go 24/7 podcast. If we don't catch you before the Christmas holiday, we hope you have a fantastic Christmas. Sunny Ship, Bryce Koon, and yeah, we'll get that thread started about the online baby shower. I'm sure my wife would absolutely love that. And we just got to. I'll also start one of where I should live inside Baton Rouge. So any comments, throw it down below. We'll figure that out as well. My name's Bryce Koon. He's Sunny Ship. We'll catch you next time here on the Go 24/7